All right, everyone, welcome into the Sideline Fantasy Radio Show. This is week one of our season. Last year, we didn't really get to do the week to week show, but we're back this year. And last week, we did our draft review show, which a lot has changed since then. So, we're going to start off by talking about those trades that went down last week. But everyone's excited. New season's coming along, about 2 hours away from kickoff. We're ready to get rolling here. I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co host, Jordan Crimson Charles. How are we doing today?
Pretty good. Football's back finally for me. For you, that was Thursday, so that time has
Yeah,
kind of passed.
we'll
But
talk, we'll not discuss
y-
that game.
yeah, no, I'm excited though.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, like I said, these shows won't take very long. They'll be 25 to 30 minutes. There might be some weeks where they're even quicker if there's not many trades going on. It's kind of hard to predict fantasy games, but we'll do our best with that. But first off, there was a lot of trades this week, and we did want to hit on those. And we didn't really get much time to talk about arguably the biggest trade so far, and that was the trade you made last week. We saw it at the very, very tail end of the show last week. Zeke was traded to you. This is prior to him signing. It was still up in the air. And you traded away Amari Cooper and Leonard Fournette. And Dave has pretty much, he's admitted, he basically traded Keenan Allen for, uh, or he traded Zeke for Keenan Allen, is basically what it boiled down to. With all the trades that were made between you two, that's basically what it boiled down to. And it's crazy to think that you now have Zeke Elliott and McCaffrey. So, kind of what went through your head doing that trade? Obviously, Zeke wasn't signed at the time, so you took a risk. Now, today, you're probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah, a lot was going through my head with that happening because Dave had actually mentioned that the day of the draft. I kind of brought it up jokingly, and then we kind of started talking for real. Um, it was tough. Obviously, I had some people telling me to do it. Why it would be good, and I had to kind of play devil's advocate for myself and tell myself, you've got Pollard, so if you don't do it and Zeke doesn't play, like you're winning here and not losing players. But once it boiled down to it, it's like I in my mind I wanted to take Zeke number two in the draft anyways, knowing Kyle was going McCaffrey number one, but he wasn't signed yet, so I couldn't touch him.
It's risky, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean it worked out in my favor that way because I did get McCaffrey and also a Zeke. So um, yeah, a lot went to my head though. I mean, trading all those players, I told myself I'm giving away three players for Zeke, but in retrospect, yeah, it was only Keenan because Dave had drafted those two players that I gave back to him for Zeke. So thinking of it that way, it was a no-brainer. I mean, even if he didn't sign, I had Pollard to kind of hold me over until he came back because it was inevitable that he came back. The Cowboys weren't going to play without Zeke for long, if at all. So it was a risk that I took. It took me a while to kind of get over the not doing it part, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I mean, we're not the season hasn't even started yet, right? A lot of these blockbuster moves where you see big running backs can happen later in the year when a team really needs to fill a couple spots rather than one. This is week one of the NFL season, and you have two of the top three running backs in fantasy. It's not week 7 or 8 where you pull off a big trade. It's week one that you have with those top guys. I mean, it is absolutely insane. I guess it's all in a day's work for Dave. I mean, he's made a lot of trades, and we'll see what happens. And the crazy thing is, me and you were not high on his team last week. I do think that trade helps him, even though he could have avoided it entirely by not doing a bunch of the trades to begin with. But he is going heavy Chargers. I mean, his if you look at his team now, I could maybe update his predictions to 5 wins. But again, the heavy bolts and the heavy Chargers make it really tough. But I think he technically is, based on projections, he is projected to beat me by 2. But we'll get into that game here once we're done with the trades. But yeah, interesting trade there. Zeke and McCaffrey on one team is going to be crazy. Another one you did, real quick, don't need to spend too much time on this one. Peterson for Moncrief. What was your take on that? That was between
I
me and you.
yeah, I was pretty simple. I mean, I just needed some wide receiver depth. You want AP because you think AP needs to be on all your fantasy teams every year as long as he's playing football. So, and obviously, he's a valuable option if he's active. Obviously, this week he's not, but after coming off of 1,000 yard year, like you're gonna have some sort of value. It was easy to trade him away because I had guys and I have Howard and I got two of the top five guys who are gonna not play unless they're on a bye. So I just needed depth elsewhere, and it was pretty easy to find it.
Yeah, not much else to say on that one, honestly. I honestly, I don't know what to expect out of James Washington, but Dante Moncrief in that Pittsburgh Steelers team, I think he can have a pretty productive year. I mean, I think he can get 700, 800 yards. Um, that's a possible flex option week in and week out. And then Adrian Peterson, it's just like pitching in baseball. You can never have enough running backs. I understand that he's actually inactive today because they're going Thompson and Geis, but who knows? Guy's had a knee issue. Maybe he gets banged up. I am shocked that he is not suiting up. This man ran for 1,000 yards last year at 33 years old. I'd like to see him keep going and doing it. Apparently, the locker room is very upset that Adrian Peterson is not suiting up for the Redskins, and it's really, in my opinion, kind of a shame. I know a lot of teams don't like carrying three running backs into a game, but it's crazy. I don't dislike the trade I made just because of the possibility of him getting on the field, but um, it is pretty wild. But that's kind of my take there. Could never have enough running backs. So, moving on to the next trade, Kyle made a trade with Dana. Dana's actually going to be in the last couple trades we talk about here. Dana made a trade with Kyle, and the details were Sony Michel from Dana to Kyle, and Kyle gave up Mark Ingram and Kenny Galladay. What is your take? If would you say there's a winner or loser in that trade? Do you see the evenness in it? What do you think?
Um, I feel like it's fairly even for the most part. If anything, Dana obviously gets some sort of advantage having two players. I do feel like with the recent news that Sony Michel will have more space to run because of the fact that you're now having to defend Antonio Brown, Julian Edelman, and Josh Gordon all at once,
Yeah.
and not even thinking about Sony in the backfield. So I feel like that's solid, but getting a Mark Ingram in a run heavy offense, if that offense can be effective, he can be very good. And then Kenny Galladay, I'm not too high on personally, but I do see why people like him because he kind of has the same, traits as a Calvin Johnson-esque type of player for Matt Stafford, who obviously can bring the best out of a guy like that. But that offense also has expressed that it's going to be more of a run heavy offense. So Galladay's value takes a little bit of a hit for me. But all in all, I feel like even with the trade with AB going to the Patriots now, it's still fairly even to me.
Yeah, I mean, Sony Michel, his value might change a little bit. Some people might be worried that the Patriots are just going to start airing it out more. I mean, to have Gordon, Edelman, and Antonio Brown throw James White back there. Why not throw it 45 times a game, right? I mean, James White's going to be a receiving back, and I think some people are actually worried that Michel's value actually takes a dip. But when they want to run the rock, when that weather starts getting cold, I see Sony Michel getting 15 carries a game easily. I still see him getting 1,000 yards this year, so I like that. Kyle had a bunch of depth on his team, and he figured, you know what? I'm going to trade in that depth and get a more reliable running back. My thing is, who knows how that Baltimore backfield is going to be? So now we're going to transition talking to Ingram. I I could see it going to whoever starts getting the hot hand starts getting that tick, but Mark Ingram is going to get, I think, a pretty long leash in being able to be that guy. They signed him a 3 or $15 million deal. I think they're going to give him a pretty large leash to be that lead back over some of the other options. I I don't know. I've always kind of liked Mark Ingram this year. I think he can be an 800 to 950 yard back. Do I dare say 1,000? Which how much with how much Baltimore is truly going to run the ball? I think he could be a safety net option for Lamar. I I personally don't see a huge drop off from Michelle to Ingram in our league's format, personally. So when you can throw Kenny Galladay in that trade as well, who was 1,000 yards last year, you're not as high on him. Maybe he doesn't reach 1,000, but in that Detroit offense, they're going to be slinging it a lot. I think Kenny Galladay is a safe 800 to 1,000 yards this year. I like the trade for Dana, but I also see where Kyle wanted to get that trade done to have a more reliable running back. Because maybe Sony Michel really does take over that role and surprises us all and runs for 11 or 1,200. Who knows? But that was one of the trades Dana made. We're going to transition to the other one here, Crimson. And again, I hate to keep ragging on our boy Dave, but I don't see where this trade benefited Dave. I think Dana won this trade. I don't want to say handedly. It's early. Who knows what's going to happen? I liked Sterling Shepard. I like Austin Eckler, especially with Austin Eckler going to be the starter. Sterling Shepard, I think, could be around 1,000 yards this year. I don't hate the trade for Dave, but if I'm him, you already have enough Chargers. Keep Cooper. Cooper's better than Shepard. We know this. LaShawn McCoy's apparently going to get a lot of playing time in Kansas City through the grapevine we're hearing. What do you think about this one?
I don't know. It can work out for either of them just because of the balance, I feel like, in this deal. I just don't like the way that Dave's is stacking Chargers. Again, yeah, that's your team, and that offense isn't awful. But now you have two running backs on your roster, and Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler, that you have to pick the right one that week, every week. Both of them are active. Both of them are going to play. Now you need to pick and choose who's going to have the game, and you're going to be wrong, 50% of the time. You're not going to always get it right in that situation. So having those guys there is great, yes, but there's no lead guy there, so you don't have him for insurance. You just have one of those guys. You know you're going to get a starting running back, but are you going to play the right one that week? And you're relying on the same team constantly, so that's what I don't like that personally. But in regards to overall kind of spectrum of things, we don't know what Sean McCoy has left in him. I mean, obviously they wouldn't pay him the money they paid him to sit on the bench, so he'll get taken that offense. So that's an upside for Dave that he's lost now because he had LaShawn. But you're getting back Eckler, who can kind of fill that same role as LaShawn. So it's not awful, just the offenses are kind of not the same, but they still both have, the power there to be good. It's the receiver for me that does it. Cooper is better than Shepard. He's in a better situation in regards to being that able to have the pressure taken off of him in Dallas. So Shepard's going to have the pressure on him in New York for the most part, receiving-wise, because Golden Tate isn't playing for 4 games. I'm not going to knock on the other dudes like Cody Latimer and stuff like that because I don't know what they can really do. But receiver-wise, Cooper has the advantage, and that's where I think the trade kind of dwindles off for Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it comes down, like we said, we know Cooper's better than Shepard. Will Eckler have a better year than McCoy? That's really what it comes down to. I mean, when you look at McCoy's little infographic thing, Eckler's, it basically says, yes, Eckler's going to be the starter, but don't expect him to see really that much more playing time than he's gotten in the past. So yes, Eckler will be the guy, and he'll probably see a little bit more playing time, but it really does sound like a pretty 50-50 split between him and Justin Jackson in regards to playing time. And as you said, you could be wrong on a week-to-week basis. If Justin Jackson's that goal line guy, and he gets 5 carries for 20 yards, but 2 of them were in the end zone, that makes it really, really tough. And I don't know how this is going to work out. I think a lot of it does boil down to LaShawn McCoy. They're saying 15, 20 snaps for him against Jacksonville, which makes sense, just to kind of get the wheels running a little bit. It's funny how much people were down on him in Buffalo and how much people are up on him in Kansas City. 15, 20 snaps, maybe he gets 6, 7 touches. That's not enough to start the guy, but if that workload starts moving up to 30, 35, 40 snaps in weeks ahead, it'll be really, I think that LaShawn McCoy to me is really one of the interesting birds this year in fantasy to see exactly how valuable he is. So we'll see. Now we're going to transition to the matchups this week, guys. Like I said, since there was so many trades, we spent a decent amount of time on that. We're only going to spend about 2-3 minutes on each game here as we kind of look at each matchup. On my screen, on the very first one, I know we're going off your screen there, Crimson. So what game do you have first on your screen? Yours?
Yeah, it's mine.
All right, so we'll start with your game. Can I borrow a Thielen versus Chop Squad? So you're versing your brother week 1. You're projected for a 5-point win here. Kind of looking at matchups and everything. I'm not going to go through every player and think how they're going to do. I'm kind of going to highlight a few guys and talk about what could be the difference maker. And honestly, I'll look straight at it. That LA Carolina game, I think, is going to be the difference maker. Is the Rams defense going to stifle Carolina? You have Cam Newton. You have McCaffrey. Can both of them be productive enough to get you that win? Or does the Rams defense hold McCaffrey to under 12, 11 points? Do they hold Cam under 15 points? If they do that, you might be in trouble. Zeke, on the other hand, rumors are he's going to get a really big workload. So, again, how big really is that workload? Are they sending a smoke screen where he gets 12 carries, or are they going to send him out there and give him 25 touches? Uh, I really see that being the difference maker. The other thing I'm curious about is Jordan Howard against Washington. That Philly backfield to me is a question mark. I don't know what to think of it. They might go whoever has the hot hand. If Miles Sanders starts going off, he might get the tick. Jordan Howard might get the tick. That's really another big question mark for me in terms of that. I would personally, if I was you, consider starting Geis. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like he's going to get the workload there, but we'll see. On the other side, just looking at a couple names here, Mahomes against Jacksonville. I want to see if that Jacksonville defense can step back up. I mean, if you can hold Mahomes in fantasy to under 16, 15 points, that's really good. Gurley, I'm curious to see with the knee injury. And if I'm your brother, I'm not sold right now yet on Sammy Watkins, especially against Jacksonville. He's got Watkins and Tyreek Hill. I would consider putting in Landry or Deshaun Jackson. That's just me. But overall, those are kind of the difference makers I see on both teams that can really be the difference between winning and losing. What's your take?
I mean, I hope I win. Essentially, is my take. I can't really speak upon my team too much, but I feel like my flex is obviously the one position that I can kind of work with the most. Like right now, obviously I can't play guys. It's just a matter of how good that Philly defense will play today. I can play Jalen Richard, who is playing Denver, but on Monday night, and they don't have AB now, so I don't know how much he'll be used. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this relies on two games. The Rams Panthers game, obviously, with me having Cam and McCaffrey and Trey having Gurley. So we'll see how that kind of goes. And then obviously Kansas City, Jacksonville, where he has three players in that game, and I'm hoping that somehow, some way, it helps me out quite a bit. But we'll see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so we're going to move on to the next matchup now. And since it is my team because I'm listed first, we'll go to that one. So it's me going against Dave, all in a day's work. And despite all those trades, despite how much we've kind of ragged on him, he is projected to win by 2 points. Who knows how those projections will pan out? Again, I think the big ones for me, how's Marlon Mack going to be in that Colts offense without Andrew Luck being there? I think that's really big. He's not going to catch the ball a lot. With Andrew Luck not there, does he possibly get more carries now? Josh Jacobs against that Denver defense. How much are they really going to use Josh Jacobs? He was never a workhorse in Alabama. Can he be in the NFL? And Lamar Jackson, I really like Lamar Jackson this week a lot, but there's always that question mark. Does he only throw 80 yards? Who knows? And Tevin Coleman. I mean, I don't know what you feel like in that San Francisco backfield, but between Brady and Coleman, I'm really curious to see who they start leaning on there. On the other team, can Fournette have a bounce back year? I think he'll be tested week 1 in KC. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's the number 1 in Pittsburgh now. Does New England really zone in on him and take him out of the game? That's kind of the big things I see from both sides. What about you?
Yeah, essentially, it's obviously on Dave's side. It's the Chargers. They have a decent matchup this week with the Colts, so that can win or lose him the week. But you're relying on that offense to be able to connect with everybody on your lineup. You're relying on Rivers to hit Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry constantly, and Eckler also getting majority of the carries and being productive. So that's obviously the big thing for Dave. And like you said, Juju, it's tough going up against Bill Belichick for your first week in a kind of a new look offense in regards to you being the number 1. So that to me is tough. Obviously, Juju's been good enough to where he can get his own with AB, but I'm really curious to see what he does by himself now. Is our offense or defense is kind of going to push towards Juju and force Big Ben to throw to James Washington and Moncrief and use James Conner more, or is Juju going to still excel and just be able to do whatever he wants? So that to me is probably Dave's second biggest issue outside of being just the Chargers and relying on all those guys. For you, yeah, it's running back wise. There's an unknown factor there to how those guys are going to be. We don't have a track record for Marlon Mack to where he's been great without Luck because we've never seen him without Luck before. so we don't really have anything to go off of. Jacobs, rookie, again, haven't seen him play a snap in the NFL personally, or I guess a more meaningful snap in a regular season game against a defense like Denver too. So that's kind of tough. And Coleman, like that, he could be good because they're playing Tampa Bay, so he's in a good spot. But with that kind of whole depth chart drama and Breida being named number one and them paying all this money for Coleman, it's like if you're not going to use him, you're not going to pay him. So he'll get usage. It's just a matter of how much, really. So I mean, yeah, they're both really somewhat. Obviously, everyone's team is essentially balanced right now, but I do think that there's more upside for your team, essentially just because you have more games you can kind of look into, and the flow can change. Dave kind of only has a matter of one that kind of dictates his entire team.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting based on that. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think. Again, I don't dislike my team, but it's funny. Obviously, the Thursday games went down. I think I was projected for like the least amount of points out of every team. I mean, I know Rob's at like 103.88, so I guess he's a little bit lower than me, but it's weird. It really is. But we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Next game up is going to be Dane's crew versus the Godfather. And really, we can break this down pretty quickly. The Thursday game went down. Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams are two of his, top picks, and they got him a combined 10 points. In PPR, that's brutal. Dana's already projected for 91. Really simple question. Does Dana still have a shot to win this week, or with those performances, is he going to be fighting a really, really high uphill battle?
I feel like it's an uphill battle for him. I mean, if Rob kind of had... that's not Rob. If Jay kind of had, weakish players playing, I would say Dana still... I'm not writing anybody out, but all this off, but it's still going to be up here battle for Dana, just because you had a running back and receiver play. They got you combined 10 points. Like, you expect more out of Devontae. They weren't bums. No, they weren't bums. So you're relying on the likes of Russell Wilson and him to kind of carry the load here. That's kind of your, I wouldn't say end all be all, but he'll be the deciding factor, I feel. He plays Cincinnati, so if he is the reason why they're up and up a lot, then he can, turn the tide very quickly. But on the other end of things, you do have Jay with absolutely everybody playing. His guys are in a decent enough matchup where, like, David Johnson plays Detroit. He could be hit or miss. We don't know how he's going to pan out. But you have Brandon Cooks, Stephon Diggs, O.J. Howard, D.D. Westbrook. Like, these guys aren't guys who are going to struggle, I feel. They're guys that are going to get their own, and starting off on a Thursday is always tough if your guys don't perform, and they simply didn't do that this week.
Yeah, and I think, not to not talk about Jay's team, but I mean, he's in a pretty good position here. I mean, 10 points on the opposition through two guys. I think an interesting one to look at this week is going to be just one guy to throw out there is D.D. Westbrook for Jay's team. How is he going to fit in that Jacksonville offense with Nick Foles there now? I think Jay's got enough depth on his team where he could have considered putting in Tariq over Westbrook. And Tariq, 9 points out of a flex ain't bad. So we'll see how that ends up panning out. I do like Westbrook, though. We'll see how he does long term. So Jay's in a good position there. We move to the next game, which is Seafells versus Tyler, Big Mac. And again, Tyler had someone go already. 13.7 point performance from Allen Robinson. He's off to a pretty darn good start. He's projected to beat Chad by about 3 points, so it's still projected to be a pretty close game here. Looking at both teams, Dalvin Cook against Atlanta. Are we going to see Dalvin Cook 100% running for 100 yards and a touchdown or two? T.Y. Hilton, we know he's a great receiver, but now he's got Brissett thrown to him. That's a big one as well. I'm not sold on Emmanuel Sanders as the flex. I think he's just waiting for the wheels to fall off. And again, we talked about Chad's bench before. I think that's got to be Golden Tate in a couple of weeks when he comes off suspension. But who knows? Emmanuel Sanders might still do pretty well. On the other side, Greg Olson's really the big iffy one for me. I know you're a Panther fan, but it's just I would feel hesitant being confident in him week in and week out. But overall, if I had to pick a team to win right now, I like Tyler's team a little bit more this week than Chad's. And these are two teams I picked to be in the playoffs. So this is a really good matchup to start off, and I think Tyler got off to a good start with Allen Robinson. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, like both these teams to me are solid. Obviously, with Tyler getting off to a hot start with your flex position getting you 13.7, you can't really go wrong there. I do think differently about Sanders. I do feel like he can be great for Chad. He's kind of more of a value guy, so like he's not really giving up, a lot every week to play him. They'll play him in the flex. You only play him as a receiver because he has guys you can fit there. But just to me, I feel like for Chad, his team is going to do what they do. It's just a matter of James White. Like, how effective will he be um, in this offense for this week and moving forward now? Obviously, not to get ahead of ourselves, but he's going to change his role now that they have so many options on that team. But like I always say, Thursday nights can make or break you a lot of the time. And Tyler's not made or broken, but his foot he's probably 2 steps ahead of Chad right now with your flex kind of giving you that 13.7 and having some decent matchup this week with Edelman, Lindsey, Breeze, and obviously your tight end there is Olsen. I feel like he still has something left in the tank, but Chad has the upper hand there with Ertz. Again, it's hard to say what team kind of is going to win. Chad is projected to lose by 3. I don't see really any glaring issue with either team, so I kind of feel like things are balanced.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the better matchups of the week, especially if you consider our prediction show, right? Both of us really like these teams. Both of us think they can be in the playoff race or in the playoffs entirely. So this is arguably, I'd say, the best matchup we have outside of maybe the next matchup, which we'll get into now, which is Peter against Kyle. Two guys, this is going to be both their third year in the league. Peter made the championship last year, struggled his first year, while Kyle, on the other hand, has not made the championship, but he's been back-to-back playoff appearances and doing really, really well. Both teams did have Thursday guys going. Peter had David Montgomery, which was a high pick, 5 points. Kyle had his defense 9 points, and it's the Bears defense, and honestly, almost week in and week out, you would take 9 points from your defense. The Bears defense, you might be hoping for 12 or 13, but I would personally take week in and week out 9-point defense every single week. In fact, I wish defenses could get more points because the defense gave up 10 points and had 5 sacks, and somehow only 9 points. But I digress. This will be an interesting matchup. How does Kamara do against that Houston Texans defense? I talked a lot of crap about Jameis Winston. He plays San Francisco week 1. I think that's going to be a really high-scoring game. I think San Francisco-Tampa Bay could be a 38-35. Do we dare say 40 points in that game from a team? Mike Evans is obviously there, so you got that combo. Mike Williams, I'm really curious to see if he can get more yards this year. I mean, that's one of the big ones as well. I don't really see any flex. I would honestly consider Breda over Jeffrey in the flex, especially with Breda technically being over Jeffrey or Breda over Coleman in the depth chart. I'm curious to see how that plays out. On the other side, the one big thing I'm going to look at, honestly, is going to be Sony Michel, which we kind of hit on earlier, and Kerryon Johnson. Does he become a top 10 to 12, fantasy running back this year? With how much Detroit throws the ball, I'm really curious to see Kerryon Johnson's touches. When he gets the ball, he does a pretty darn good job, but they need to give him the ball, and we will see how that goes. But overall, like I said, last matchup and this matchup might be two of the most important games to watch this week. What sticks out to you?
Yeah, obviously the Montgomery play sticks out to me
Yeah,
the most because you expected him to be better than he was. He wasn't bad, but picking him so high and having high aspirations for him and seeing them use that backfield the way they did on Thursday,
gotta be a little scary.
if I'm an owner of Montgomery, I'm a little scared because they used everybody kind of in a fair amount of ways. Like everyone got their touches, but there wasn't a clear cut guy. So having a guy in that backfield, Tariq, I feel like is the top option in fantasy if you're playing PPR. But like even Mike Davis, I feel like played a better game than Montgomery did, fantasy wise, if I'm correct. So that scares me to begin with. But outside of that, like if I'm Pete, like I have Kamara still. I have a good matchup in Evans, and I have Winston, so it kind of stacks a bit there. I have a good matchup with Mike Williams. Same with Kittle. Alshon Jeffrey in my flex isn't awful by any means because again, the number one receiver in your flex is never bad. And then so his team still is good. Like Montgomery won't kill you in this situation, but it discourages me to see my guy do that to start my fantasy season. On the other hand, though, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it goes to show that, yes, Montgomery was one of his top picks. He got 5. He's still technically, I don't know how much people put into stock in the fantasy projections, he's still technically projected to beat Kyle by 4. I don't know if that pans out that way, but this is, again, one of the big matchups this weekend. And Kyle's rolling the dice. I don't know if you noticed that. He's going Darren Waller as his tight end who he just picked up.
Yeah. And that, to me, I went there and actually looked last night to see where he was at. Kyle had picked him up, I believe, 12 hours ago at that point or whatever. But looking at that offense, somebody had to catch the ball. Tight end is a barren wasteland after the first 3-4 guys. And you have now a tight end in an offense that isn't going to be fantastic by any means, but it's a pass catcher on a team that will likely be down in most games and kind of, having to throw the ball a lot to get back into them. So taking a flyer on somebody like that can pay off very well, especially if you click and look. I'm going to click this thing now, look at his schedule. I don't think it's that bad, kind of going ahead. Like you play Denver. Yeah, it's tougher, but then you play Kansas City, who's not too bad of a matchup. Minnesota, tough. Indianapolis, better off. Chicago, tough. And then you're on a bye. Before going through there, like you have these defenses that aren't, going to shut you down entirely.
Yeah, he was hard on that. He must have been watching some Hard Knocks,
Yeah. So I mean, taking a guy like that isn't awful by any means. Obviously, it's a flyer at any tight end we have in teams outside of guys who have Kittle or it's Kelsey, even Hunter Henry. I'd put in that position. OJ Howard, I'd put in that position. Those guys are kind of solidified. But the value is there because that team's going to be throwing quite a bit. You have 2 running backs in Kerryon and Saquon who demand the ball and they're going to get it. You have Wentz in a good matchup. So, like, this matchup is pretty big. So, but again, both guys are still level-headed in my opinion, they are because, yes, Peter only got 5 from Montgomery, but Kyle got 9 from a defense, which is very good, I feel. Yes. But at the same time, you can't really rely on his receivers as much as you can rely on Peter's receivers because Woods is in a good place right now. Godwin, I don't know how high I am on him. I'm not very high. I don't know what he does a lot of the time. I haven't seen him. I've seen him play, obviously, being a Panthers fan and seeing him twice a year. But I don't think he is that as good as people think. I think, obviously, the first couple of weeks will dictate that. But if you're having a guy throwing the ball quite a bit and you have a guy like Mike Evans alongside you, he'll demand most targets. So having your wide receiver 2 being Godwin, to me, is kind of sketchy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup there between Kyle and Peter, and they're in the same division. That's going to have some ramifications down the road for sure. We're going to look at the last matchup here before we wrap up. We got the Dak Street Boys versus Ryden Rodgers. Rob, 2-time champ in this league. Tori, again, had people going Thursday. Rodgers with 13, Crosby with 4. Again, Crosby kicker. You'd really like your kicker to get between 6 to 8. I feel is a comfortable range, so 4 might feel a little low. Rodgers at 13 might be tough. If you want Rodgers to get 18 to 20 plus every week, but honestly, I know Tori is projected for 87 for the rest of the way out. I don't think she's out of this yet. I really don't. I personally think that Giants-Cowboys game is going to be so low scoring. I personally, if I'm Rob, am going, I don't care if Baker's playing Tennessee or not. I'm going Baker Mayfield over Dak Prescott. That's me personally. I think Prescott could do just as bad as Rodgers did with 12, 13, 14 points. Derrick Henry, last year, again, was non-existent those first 12 weeks until those last 4. I'm curious to see what he looks like week 1. I think that's going to be a big difference maker. And I'm really surprised Rob isn't pairing Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham. I mean, he drafted those two for a reason. DJ Moore, I think, is a big one as well. You can probably speak more on him than me. In the flex, he was drafted a lot higher in drafts this year than I would have liked, but we'll see how that works out. On the other side, I mean, I do like Torrey's team. Le'Veon, how does he look in his first game in New York? Devontae Freeman coming off an injury. Does he get the boatload of the touches? Kenyon Drake going against a pretty tough Baltimore defense, so we'll see how he does in the first matchup there. Cooper Kupp, I think, is big. Does he kind of be the forgotten man in LA going against Carolina, or does he kind of emerge with Carolina focusing on Cooks and Woods? So I think this is still a really interesting matchup. I know the projections say Torrey's only going to score 87, but I still think this one's open despite Rodgers' 13. What do you got?
I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum here. I feel like Torrey's start on Thursday wasn't awful by any means, but looking at her team as a whole, Le'Veon's matchup with Buffalo isn't like a kind of given that he'll just be great. Obviously, it's Le'Veon Bell, so he'll get his own again, but he hasn't played with this team all preseason, so we'll kind of, again, that showed in regards to the Bears, and those guys haven't played a snap all preseason. They were kind of rusty. But I feel like everybody will be rusty week one because it's, that's how week one is. But Freeman's matchup is tough in Minnesota. Corey Davis is very hit or miss fantasy-wise. This guy kind of can give you 2 or give you 22. So, to me, he's not really a strong wide receiver one. Like you said, Kupp kind of can get lost in the sauce and in the mix of things on that team. But last year he was very prevalent touchdown-wise. So, really being Kupp, if you catch 3 balls for 50 yards and a touchdown, your day is pretty much set and you're good. So you kind of can't expect much more from him. But yeah, it's just weird that this whole game relies on kind of a lot of Tennessee, Cleveland.
It sure does.
And it's just that, to me, that game is just weird. I don't think Tennessee will really do a whole lot there. So that kind of scares me away from some people. But Torrey, to me, is in a hole. Obviously, again, not running anybody out, but her guys need to come up big for her, like Corey Davis and Kenyon Drake in a bad matchup against Baltimore. It comes down to a lot of Antonio Brown not playing. Yeah, like if you have AB in there and you don't need to play Corey Davis and AB plays Denver on Monday as a Raider, obviously not happening, but you kind of take a grain of salt with that because he's going to be a Patriot now, and that's going to boost his value a lot to me because of the quarterback you have throwing the ball to you and the people around you taking the heat off of you. So so that's going to boost him.
I mean, Antonio Brown's value rises, right? I mean, that's still one of the big things we hadn't talked about yet. I know we're running a little bit over the 30-minute mark, but that's fine. I mean, Antonio Brown not playing week one, granted, but his value rises in New England, correct?
Yeah, it has to. It has to. You in Oakland, you had Tyrell Williams. That was it. You had Derek Carr throwing you the ball. I'm not saying Derek Carr is bad. He's no Brady. I guess the best quarterback in the league right there is Brady. So to have the best quarterback in the league paired up with Julian Edelman, who is a very great route runner, and he's able to kind of find holes where holes aren't really there. So Brady trusts him. You have Josh Gordon coming back. Who knows how good he'll be, but if he can even be 3/4 of the guy he was in the past, that's a big threat right there on the receiving end of things. And Sony Michel. So there's a lot of people to look at. AB obviously being one of those guys, but you can't look at everybody all the time. So his value does increase for sure. You lose one, whatever, but
yeah, and here's the thing: if Torrey can somehow survive week one and win, and then get AB back next week with him being on the Patriots, if she can somehow pull out a victory week one, she's gonna be. I know it's week one, it's early, but that's a really nice start. With AB coming back after that, I mean that would be a big win for her week one. I don't like to say week one's the end all be all, but that's really going to set the tone for her season, I think, if she can somehow escape with a victory. You're kind of not too sure on it. I'm not 100% sold just because of the performances that have been had already, but it'll be interesting. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to say this, and I know I say it every year. These first 5 weeks are huge. Why? Because they're all divisional games. You can argue week 3 to 5 are bigger than weeks 1 to 2 because your week 1 and 2 opponent you will play twice. You will play them twice. And you could also argue if you're playing a team that's really not that good or you don't think is that good, you get to play them twice. For example, as much as we've talked about Dave being a bad team, I get to play his team twice. But they're all division games. These are going to be the games that the tiebreakers come into effect. The tiebreakers matter. Week 3 to 5 are divisional opponents that you play one time. So if you have a tie record with them at the end of the year, it literally that's it. It comes down to head to head. So weeks 1 through 5 are so crucial in the fantasy season compared to the other weeks of the year. It's important to get off to a big start. So I'm excited the season's going to start rolling here. It's going to be an interesting season. We got both divisions. I think both divisions are pretty close to even. I think Peter and Kyle, Rob and Chad being in one division's tough, and then me, you, Dave, Dana. We'll see what Jay and Rob or Trey and Jay can do this year. Any last thoughts here, Crimmy, before we wrap up and get this season kicked off?
No. I mean, I'm ready to see how things, pan out. Obviously week 1 is a pretty big week in regards to getting off that 1-0 start and getting that confidence behind you. But this is where we kind of see the tempo of teams, where teams kind of can be headed, the trends and stuff that we love to follow here in fantasy football land. But I'm excited to get things going.
All right, sounds good. Like I said, I don't expect all shows to go this long, but who knows? If you guys enjoy it, we'll keep it rolling. So thanks for joining us for Sideline Week 1 Fantasy Preview, and good luck to your teams. Talk to you later.